What's up, Internet? My name is Short of the Max Extreme.
And I'm Ghost Hunter Dave.
And this is IMPERIUS REX. Today, we'll be reviewing Grant Morrison's Multiversity.
Cue theme song.
Alright, welcome everybody. Oh, you dropped the pen.
Oh, man.
And holding hot coffee.
It's the first show jitters. Hi there, true believers. This is Dave from the future. But not your future, more like the future of these guys that you were just watching. Technically the past by now, so just... Jesus. This is gonna be a chore. Okay, think of me as Monitor Dave, if you're familiar with the DC Comics Monitor characters who police and, well, monitor the multiverse. You on board with that? I'm gonna stop you right there. No one is. No one's familiar with it. It's a terrible reference, way too deep for this early in the episode. We'll get to the monitor stuff, but for now, think of me as the guy that has to step in occasionally to keep this thing on track. Keep in mind, this was our inaugural episode, so we just kind of went with the flow. Normally, we do this without cameras and a lot more beer, so just please sit back, try to enjoy yourself, and I'll do my best at keeping this marginally coherent. Back to you guys.
Welcome everybody for the first international. It is international because it's on the World Wide Web.
Really, we can talk to anybody at this point.
The first inaugural show of IMPERIUS REX, a show for comic lovers all about comics. We are reviewing Grant Morrison's 2014's Multiversity, which has just been released in hardcover. But before we get to that, I feel like there's a little bit more that you should have read beforehand. Some prerequisites.
Prerequisite. You took the words right out of my mouth.
It would be cool if we said it at the same time.
Let's not get that crazy. One thing at a time, Troy.
Great.
We're already handling Grant Morrison.
Before I feel like you need to read Multiversity, I feel like you may need to read Final Crisis first.
Absolutely. And before you dive into Final Crisis, you should really familiarize yourself with the events leading up to Final Crisis in the four trade collection miniseries 7 Soldiers.
And maybe even before that, go back for a little bit of a tidbit? Bit of a tidbit?
Yeah, smidgen.
A smidgen, which I just found out today from you, the Justice League of America Ultramarine Corps. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think when it was released in issues, it was called JLA Classified, but...
The collected trade.
Ultramarine Corps. Doesn't sound very good, and it's not absolutely essential, but there's a couple moments where if we're going this deep down the rabbit hole, you might as well keep going.
And we wouldn't even go this far deep if it wasn't Grant Morrison. Anybody not in the know, Grant Morrison writes some pretty heavy shit. We're gonna swear?
Yeah, we can swear.
Keep it to a dull roar.
So, first on the docket, JLA Ultramarine Corps, which is a 3-issue miniseries that Grant Morrison did along with illustrator Ed McGuinness. Alright, I'm going to stop you right there because this summary is just garbage. All over the place with little to no sense of coherency whatsoever. We'll chalk it up to first episode jitters, so take a break, pass Dave, have another beer, try to loosen up. I'll hand it back off in a second. So in this miniseries, a group of anti-heroes, reminiscent of the Authority or Marvel's Ultimate Team, gets captured by Gorilla Grodd, and the JLA have to come to their rescue. This kind of acted as Morrison's commentary on all the gritty, take-no-prisoners type of superheroes that became popular at that time. The Ultramarine Corps are the pricks who aren't afraid to make the tough choices, like killing the villains for the supposed betterment of mankind. Something they complain that the Justice League needs to man up and do. However, as these things go, they get into a bit of a pickle and end up needing assistance from the JLA, and in turn learn a valuable lesson on what it takes to be a hero. How does this tie into the other series that we're reviewing? Well, take another crack at it, Pass Dave. This is the first appearance, I believe, of one of the villains that pops up in 7 Soldiers, Nebula, the Nebula Man. If we're I mean, comic names are so hard because you can't hear them phonetically. You just have to.
You're just guessing.
Guess and pray that you don't make a fool of yourself on some internet video later on. Perhaps I handed it back too soon. But essentially, he is he's like a celestial hunter. Celestial meaning he is kind of a black void, which is made up of a universe. Mm-hmm. And in the present time, he is the universe Quebec, something with a lot of Q's and U's.
Probably Quebec.
And then in the future, he matures to this celestial god who plays a role in Seven Soldiers. That's really about all that's in this. It ties in, not particularly great, but it's a little bit of seeding before we get to Seven Soldiers.
Sure. The next series that this leads into, which this Nebula man, question mark?
Yeah.
Is
we'll nail it down by the end of this.
Is Seven Soldiers. If you want to pick it up in trades, it's 4 collected trades. How many individual issues was it when it came
31 issues.
And it is bookended with Seven Soldiers 1 and 2, right?
0 and 1.
0 and 1.
0 and 1.
And then all in between there are separate little stories, not one-shots, of other, I would say, B or C-list characters.
Yeah. Yep. I think the main draw of the series as a whole, which is kind of a cool concept, is there's a reality-altering threat coming to Earth called the Sheeta, which are this fairy-like, insect-like, futuristic society that go back in time every couple hundred years or so, probably 1,000 years, to harvest, and they wipe out civilization, leave a little bit left to grow, and then they return to the future so they can go back and do it again. And so there needs to be a team to combat this threat.
Always needs to be a team.
Exactly. This, for instance, is a team of 7, which is made up of Zatanna, Clarion the Witch Boy, Mr. Miracle, the new incarnation of Mr. Miracle, the Guardian, Frankenstein, the Shining Knight, and
the
Bulleteer. Yep. Each one of these is kind of like a revamp of the characters.
Yeah.
Morrison kind of picked out people from the cobwebs and just like, I'm going to make these guys cool again. So each one of these gets a 4-issue miniseries, starting at 1, going to 4, that gives like their backstory, and they all slightly are kind of interwoven, but each one of them could very much be a standalone series. And the whole concept of this was these 7 soldiers defeat the villain without ever officially meeting or interacting with each other.
They're never really a team.
No, they're never a team.
Yeah.
Which is kind of one of the cool things about it, because the Sheeta are prophesized to be beaten by 7 soldiers, so throughout time they keep going back and killing and targeting teams of 7. And that's why these guys beat them, because they're never officially a team, but they are 7 individual people that kind of end up working together through happenstance.
It's been a while since I've read this one, but did they ever make reference that it could be the Justice League to fight this?
I know Morrison calls it out a lot, because the Justice League is also a team of 7, but they don't ever really come up. Like, they don't really get into the big guns. They reference the Justice League. Zatanna mentions many times that she worked with the Justice League, but yeah, I don't know, they must be off-world. It might be taking place during Infinite Crisis, actually.
Okay.
Which I haven't read. Heard it gets weird. Here,
Infinite
Superboy
Crisis
punches reality.
Well, yeah, sure.
As you would.
It's just more or less a wall of a paradise dimension. It's probably almost been like 10 years since I've read 7 Soldiers. I want to say it is.
Yeah. It was one of my first experiences with Grant Morrison's writing.
Yeah, I want to say it was too.
And when I read it, I was like, yeah, that was pretty good. But I read it as the trades were released, and it's really something you gotta sit down and read it like all the way through. You can't wait months for them to be collected.
Yeah.
So reading it a second time, just finishing it like the other day, way more enjoyable. Makes so much more sense. And like with all Grant Morrison works, it's best enjoyed with like an internet reference page alongside you, because it's essentially doing it's essentially doing homework. If you want to get the most out of his writing, and this doesn't sound enjoyable, I know that, but that's just one of the draws of Grant Morrison. Once you've become a comic book fan, you've read, all there is to read, and then you're like, you know what, I want something a little harder. So
a little more difficult.
Yeah. Like there's a couple writers that are kind of the gateway drug there. Miller's a little more accessible, stuff like that. And then you get into Morrison, and you read it once, and you're like, I don't know what the hell this is. And you, for whatever reason, get an inkling to read it again, and you get more and more involved in it. And by the end of it, you love it because there's nothing else like it.
Yeah.
But
maybe.
No, there isn't. But man, like, to get the most out of it, you really have to put forth the effort. Like, you have to invest yourself in it, or else you're not going to make heads or tails of it, as we'll get to when we talk about Final Crisis.
Yes. And what's good about... well, you can take it either way. What's good about Grant Morrison's work, like, he has really accessible stuff. Like, Justice League Earth 2. It's a straight-up superhero story. I've never read his entire Justice League run, but I heard that's pretty accessible. But like with even more obscure concepts, like the Seven Soldiers here, and possibly Final Crisis Multiversity, who knows? Me. You get more out of a past read with more subsequent reads, because it sometimes fills in holes. They're like, where was he going here? And it could fill in with possibly another read over here that you wouldn't even expect. But Grant Morrison does a lot by encompassing all of continuity. Like, he is a huge fan of continuity. Like, anything that's ever happened,
he knows about it.
He knows about it and will use.
Yeah.
So
the more ridiculous, the better.
Well, it's not even that. He's just like saying, this happened. Like, anything from Action Comics #1 all the way up to whatever you're reading now, all of that is fair game to use, because why would you shy away from a story that was created by somebody?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, he's very, very respectful of other writers' work.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't just go and never trashes anybody.
No.
He's
not ever.
He's Alan Moore and Grant Morrison are like a yin-yang symbiosis there, where they're both excellent writers. And, on first glance, you'd think they're very similar, other than I think they hate each other. Morrison is more laid back. I don't care, I'm doing whatever I want.
He hates me, it's fine. It's his life.
And Alan Moore is more
of
the... You want to do an Alan Moore for us? So if they were going to cast a movie about comic creators, or like really Grant Morrison needs to do something just bewildering, because he's already got such an interesting backstory. He needs to do something to get on the public radar so they can make a biopic about him and just go into this bizarre history that he has, because it's one of the most, he's one of the most interesting people in the world. Yeah. And like, it's just, you don't have to agree with all of it, but man, the guy's happy. He seems well adjusted. He has the most ridiculous ideals and beliefs, but like, gets him by, makes for great reading. Yeah. Super creative guy, just cool.
And even if you don't even enjoy the work that he did, it's still good to talk about, as we're doing right here.
Oh yeah, you could hate it and still talk about it for hours.
Yeah.
And someone could love it and talk about it with the guy that hates it, and they can just go back and forth.
Yeah, it's true.
So if they were to make a movie, who's playing Grant Morrison and who's playing Alan Moore? Because obviously I assume the big thing that would happen is they're going to get into a fight to the death at some point. Alan Moore would be played by Christian Bale.
I was going to say Sean Connery.
Yeah, that would work.
Because he's not even afraid to hit a woman. And I would just want Grant Morrison to play himself.
Oh, yeah. That's the ideal casting.
Yeah.
James McAvey.
Yeah, he would be good.
And he's got the shaved head for the new X-Men movie, too. And he's Scottish. Man.
Boom.
we need to affect his life in some dramatic way, so someone somewhere makes a movie out of it.
James McAvoy, I know you're watching this.
Little help.
Morrison.
Little help here.
Please. But back into Seven Soldiers.
Yes. See how these conversations go. You just get off so many different tangents.
The main connective tissue to the next story that we're going to incorporate before we get to Multiversity is the Mr. Miracle portion of Seven Soldiers. Mm-hmm. And in the first read of Seven Soldiers, the Mr. Miracle part was honestly my least favorite because it has to deal with the New Gods, and I'm not a fan of the New Gods at all. I feel like it's a very intriguing idea. Mm-hmm. Like, the old gods die, and these new gods are here to take their place, and they take different forms, and here they are. There's a heaven, which is called
New Genesis,
and Apocalypse is hell.
Yes. And it's all Jack Kirby creation, too. Yeah. I think it was completely created by him.
Yeah, it's all his masterworks.
Yeah. If we really want to get into some more tie-ins here, because who wouldn't want to do more research and reading? There's also a miniseries that took place, I believe, right before Seven Soldiers called Death of the New Gods, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to find it today.
Which ties directly into what happens in Final Crisis. And if you just picked up Final Crisis and had no idea that all the new gods had a big war and everyone died and fell to Earth, again, you're completely lost. So... Yeah. You gotta take some of this on yourself, readers.
Yeah.
Come on.
A lot of
Morrison didn't write that one, so we're gonna skip it.
Yeah. A lot of people out there probably know Darkseid. He's like the big bad you've probably seen in Superman cartoons. He's just been a big bad in a lot of other comics too. He's just the big bad brute. But going back to Seven Soldiers, his story, I can't even. You just recently read it.
So there's a war in heaven, essentially. All the gods fall. They get kind of reincarnated back on Earth. Mm-hmm. Darkseid becomes Boss Darkseid, who's like a gangster club owner.
Yep.
All the new gods are like homeless derelicts who are... Metron is like a paraplegic confined to a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So the evil has the upper hand right now.
Yeah.
And the Mr. Miracle arc, God, it's weird. Put me on the spot trying to provide any sort of synopsis of this. But it's almost like the Jesus Christ story where he goes into a black hole for 7 days, as Jesus did, and speaks to Metron, receives word that he has to undergo like a change, a transformation, do a sacrifice, and eventually it ends with him... basically like sacrificing his life so that one of the imprisoned new gods, a good god, gets to go free, and he's killed by Darkseid. But then he's Mr. Miracle, super escape artist, and he's able to escape death. Mm-hmm. And throughout that, it kind of establishes Darkseid's new role on Earth, and all of his minions are in human form, but still working to try to take over and enslave humanity. Mm-hmm. Darkseid is like the Grant Morrison favorite villain template, which is just like this all-encompassing evil,
right?
That like just wants to enslave humanity and turn them into like mindless drones. I think that's Morrison's biggest fear as a big creative individual, a free spirit. Like his worst nightmare is to get all semblance of a self and personality erased and just turned into an anti-person, a mindless drone, another cog in the wheel of like the big machine.
Yeah.
That is exactly what Darkseid is in his take on him, and he's got like the anti-life equation, which is an equation of like grief plus despair divided by just
it's whatever.
Yeah, all kinds of terrible descriptive words equals like the anti-life, and then that once a person hears that, they lose all will to live, and that's how he enslaves everybody, which comes into play in Final Crisis.
It's not even technically like a will, they lose their will to live, it's like they give their everything to Darkseid and to follow his every command because life is meaningless.
Yeah.
So that plays very heavily in Final Crisis.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a favorite Seven Soldiers book?
I actually really liked the Bulleteer.
Mm-hmm.
It was straightforward, kind of superhero-y thing, and I really liked the art in it. I also like Clarion the Witch Boy as well.
Yeah, it has just a ton of really good artists in it. A lot of names that, like, when it came out, I don't think they were quite as well established, but now a lot of them have become kind of heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Just really, really creative page design, layouts, everything. J.H. Williams III does the first and the last issue of the whole thing, and his is phenomenal. He's done, like, the Sandman Overture, he did Batwoman, he did Promethea by Alan Moore. And then just Simone Bianchi, Cameron Stewart, Ryan Sook, Fraser Irving, Doug
Mankey.
And Pascal Ferry does Bulleteer. And all of them great.
Yeah.
Every one of them is excellent to look at. One of my favorites is Frankenstein, I think, which is Morrison's take on straightforward Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. He's been alive since he was created in the book, and he's just like just a one-man wrecking crew. Like, it's funny because in the book, like, it has a lot of themes that it touches on, and one of them is transformation. Every miniseries, a character transforms from where they were at the beginning to where they are at the end, except Frankenstein. Frankenstein has no need to transform.
Just a constant.
He is just like merely a blunt instrument used to hammer the Shiva. Just doesn't care, like, kills people, they curse him, he's gonna have to live with that. Doesn't matter. Just keeps on doing it.
Yeah, I actually really like Frankenstein's arc in that too. That's really good.
Yep, and Zatanna's is really cool too.
Yeah, she breaks the fourth wall a few times in that one.
Yeah, she does the typical Grant Morrison addressing the readers and asking for help, which is another big thing that
a huge
we will
thing.
see.
Even though, we'll see. But really, you can go along for the ride in all of Seven Soldiers, and the only thing that really ties anything so far to the next series of books is the Mr. Miracle stuff. Otherwise, just enjoy everything else. It's all really good. It's not... The Mr. Miracle stuff is probably the most convoluted. I won't even say it's convoluted. It just takes a little more... Slow down, read it, absorb it, and there you go. Like, I haven't read it since I first read it, but I guarantee you after reading some other things that I would get this a lot more after.
Yeah, it might help to do the method that we did where we worked backwards. We read Multiversity, and I thought, man, that seems really familiar.
Yep.
So I read Final Crisis again, and it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, and then you were like,
it's basically
you should read Final Crisis.
Yeah. And then reading Final Crisis, it's like, oh, wait, I think Seven Soldiers tied into this. So going back to that, and working backwards like that is... I don't know, if you've never read them before, obviously read them in the right order, but then once you've read it, hey, go backwards. Read it all the way through again.
Ray Morrison would love it.
He would. He'd get a kick out of it. Hey, that turned out pretty okay. Once it got rolling and we each got a couple beers in us, which would only make sense that the longer we go and the more we drink, the better it will get, right? Let's find out.
That leads us into 2008's Final Crisis.
Just joking. We're going to take a break for today because, trust me, you don't want to watch all this in one sitting. Unless you're going drink for drink with the two of us, then it's probably tolerable. It might get long, and it will get geeky. So for now, take a breather, and we'll see you next time for everything you wanted to know but didn't know you wanted to know about Final Crisis. See you next time on Imperius Rex.